You are about to engage in the ELA Guidebook Unit Chasing Lincoln's Killer. The purpose of this video is to learn about the causes of the Civil War so you can connect the tensions of that time to the people we read about in the Guidebook Unit. Be sure you have your handout and something to write with for the video. Less than 80 years after Americans won their independence from Britain in the American Revolutionary War, American states were at war with one another. Why? In the Guidebook Unit Chasing Lincoln's Killer, we will read about people whose lives were affected by the American Civil War, as well as major American figures who were loyal to both sides during the war. This video will help you understand the causes of the war and give insights into what people's perspectives were during this time. In 1861, war broke out between the states located in the North and those located in the South of the United States. That war lasted 4 long years. The states colored red wanted to create their own country. The states colored blue did not want the southern states to leave. They wanted unity to keep the country as it was. The areas colored gray were not yet divided into states, and they were called territories. The states colored yellow didn't quite know what to do. They were caught in the middle. Some of the people sided with the North, and some sided with the South. There was one main reason the southern states decided to leave the United States, and it involved disagreement about slavery. In 1619, a Dutch ship brought 20 Africans to Jamestown, Virginia. They were considered servants. By 1775, there were 500,000 slaves in the colonies. By 1804, all northern states had abolished or gotten rid of slavery. The consensus of 1860 shows that 3.9 million slaves lived in the southern states. A major conflict over slavery arose when the states located in the South wanted to protect their rights to own slaves, while the states in the North did not believe slavery should continue. Where did most of the slaves live in the South? Let's take a look at a map to help us answer that question. The U.S. Coast Survey map from 1860 of the southern states shows how slavery was concentrated along the Chesapeake Bay and in eastern Virginia, along South Carolina and Georgia coast, in Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi, and finally in the Mississippi River Valley. All of these areas were full of rich soil needed to grow crops. Why were slaves so important to the people in the South? People made their living in the South from farming, and the very large farms, called plantations, needed many laborers to take care of their crops of cotton, sugar, and tobacco. These crops required many people to plant, grow, and harvest. There wasn't yet heavy machinery invented to help do the work. Therefore, farm owners relied on inexpensive slave labor to make a living. You are ready to think about why slaves were so important to farmers in the South. Pause this video to record your answers on your handout at the first stop sign. Then press play when you are ready to continue. Slavery was important to farmers in the South because they needed many workers to farm their land. Their livelihoods depended on being able to make money, and slave labor was very inexpensive. Taking a look at other key differences between the North and South will help us understand how different the lives of Northerners and Southerners were. The Northern states had more than twice the number of people living in them. The South was full of large farms that produced a few important products, while the North had almost all of the factories that produced most of what people needed, like shoes, fabric, and building materials. Another big difference was that the North was receiving a huge number of immigrants coming from Europe in search of a better life. Immigrants made up the inexpensive labor the North needed to work in its factories. The immigrants didn't want to live in the South and compete against slaves for jobs. Northern states made money without using slave labor. You are ready to think about why the South fought so hard to keep slavery. Pause this video to record your answers on your handout at the second stop sign. Then press play when you are ready to continue. You might have said that the South fought hard to keep slavery because they had 85% of large farms in the country. Those large farms needed lots of workers and slaves were inexpensive. You may have also said that the South relied very heavily on farming, while the North had other ways to make money, like making things people needed in factories. 85% of factories were in the North. Let's go back to our map for a moment. We have already learned that the southern red states on this map were states who decided they no longer wanted to be a part of Greater United States. In 1861, they proclaimed their own nation called the Confederate States of America. Known as the Confederacy, they did what they call seceded from or left the Union. This is known as the Secession. The government of the United States of America, called the Union, did not recognize this new nation and wanted all states to make up one country. The yellow states were called border states. They were slave states, but they didn't leave the United States. In April 1861, war officially began when the Confederate Congress declared war against the United States. The Confederate States of America, consisting of 11 southern states, created a new flag and elected a new leader, Jefferson Davis. The United States of America consisted of the remaining states, with Abraham Lincoln as president. Let's identify the main reasons for the Civil War. We will summarize them in a T-chart. There was one main reason the southern states decided to leave the United States, and it involved disagreement about slavery. We know that the Confederate States of America, located in the South, wanted to protect their rights to own slaves, while the northern United States of America did not want to continue the practice. Additionally, the farmers in the South wanted to take their slaves with them when they bought land and expanded into the western states and territories. The North wanted only white labor to be used. The southern states believed that each state be able to make decisions about issues like whether or not slavery was legal. Most people living in the northern states believed that slavery was a national issue, not a local one. Knowing the forces that sparked the Civil War will help you better understand the people you will read about in the guidebook unit Chasing Lincoln's Killer. When you finish this video, be sure to turn in your completed handout to your teacher.